You and I are talking about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And we just talked about the powerful step of crossing the threshold. And now you have come to the midpoint. Oof. Now, this is where you've left the ordinary world. You've answered the call. You've crossed the threshold. This is where the work begins. This, by the way, is also where the magic happens. It's also where you tend to find your mentors and your allies, because once you set off on this journey, if you ever notice that all kinds of people start to show up to help, it's pretty cool, right? But here's the thing about the midpoint. It's also where there are so many challenges along the way. And it's also not the end of the journey yet. See, this point signifies the second half of the movie, right? And you're probably going to spend the second half of your life on this part of the journey too. I mean, this happens in all the stories that we love, right? In Star Wars, along the journey, Luke faces challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge, and one ally after another shows up. And same thing happens to Milan, including a huge battle that she thinks is the final stand, but it isn't. And in The Lord of the Rings, holy smokes. I mean, just think of how it twists and it turns, and Frodo and his companions also are facing challenge after challenge and increasing dangers. And just when you think it's about to all end, boom, something unbelievable happens. And in the movie world, this second act is so long. It just keeps going. I mean, how many battles are there? How many challenges? How many times are they going to fall down? Well, it's testing your strength and your resilience. And you also get glimpses of success, little wins that keep you going. And here's the thing about the midpoint. Don't you dare turn back. Do not do it. And in your life, the midpoint in your journey could show up in so many different ways. It could be a series of challenges or setbacks. It's the moment that you may question yourself. You know, I think of my friend Jody, who just moved back, and I imagine her kind of pulling into the driveway, moving in with her parents, who were both recently hospitalized. Can you imagine how she's going to face the challenges? I mean, you can imagine how she's going to question, is this the right decision? What the heck am I doing here in the middle of Michigan? What is going on? This is not what I thought was going to happen. And she's going to have this long time where it feels like she's not making progress, or she's not going to break through, and she's not going to understand, where is this all leading? But it's always leading somewhere, isn't it? And that's the hero's journey. And the same is true for you, to trust that it's leading you somewhere, to trust that when you answer the call, you will be rewarded at some point. That's the midpoint. If you're sitting there holding yourself back and you're telling yourself it's too late, or my life is so busy, I couldn't possibly fit in this thing that I want to do, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. You can go to grad school. You can move across country. You can start that business. You do have the time, and you can fit it in. And I want to share a personal story with you. My husband, Chris, for example, he was in this stage for a long time. When we first got married, he decided that he wanted to get his MBA. He answered the call. He crossed the threshold. And then the midpoint? Holy smokes. Do you know he earned his MBA from Babson by taking one class at a time? It took the man 7 years to complete his degree. Do you know how many times he thought about quitting? He would come home from class at night after working all day and be like, I am literally twice as old as everybody in the class. In fact, it took so long that all 3 of our children were born while he was in the MBA program. He thought about giving up all the time. This stage, the midpoint, this is a slog. And you want to know what? We all face it. It's part of the hero's journey. You know, I'm in the middle of a slog right now. I am writing a book. I am so excited about the book. I answered the call. I crossed the threshold. I've been putting pen to paper. I'm also not done with the manuscript. And I am spending every single weekend all weekend and every single evening, just slogging away. And in fact, this past week, I sat in a chair for 3 days straight. I could not write a single word. I felt like I was at that point in The Lord of the Rings where Frodo is at that weird, disgusting pond at the base of Mordor, or however the hell you say that scary mountain that he's going toward. Just, it's not working. Why am I here? This is the part of the writing and releasing of a book. It's not sexy. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like quitting. This is the midpoint, and I'm experiencing everything that heroes experience in the movies that we love for literally 50% of the movie. The ups, the downs, the questioning of your ability, the unexpected challenges. And here's what the midpoint does. It requires something of you. It requires you to keep showing up, to keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper within yourself, to keep surprising yourself, and to keep going. It would be so easy to quit, but don't you dare. The movie would be over. The journey would be done. I mean, it is called the hero's journey, not the hero's finish line. So you're not finished. In fact, you're never finished. I mean, that's the point of your life, right? And that's my big message to you right now. You are not finished. You have so much more strength and resilience and ability that you haven't even tapped into yet. And you won't unless you keep going. Because as you keep facing these challenges in your life, in this midpoint, yeah, you'll have lots of little wins, but it's through facing the challenges that you discover what you're meant to discover about yourself, whether it's Luke defeating the Empire or Frodo destroying the ring and saving the world, or you finishing the manuscript, or getting your master's, or settling into that new stage of life and creating it to be extraordinary. You'll figure it out. I mean, every single movie that you love ends with the hero of the movie figuring it out. So let me stop and ask you, what did they actually figure out? What did Luke figure out? What did Frodo figure out? What did Milan figure out? If you look back at your own life and you think about the most challenging things that you have ever faced and lived through, what did you figure out? You figured out who you are and what you're capable of. And you may not think you're changing the world when you go back to school or when you pack up your stuff and leave your job and move across country and back in with your parents. You may not think you're changing the world when you answer the call for adventure that's calling to you. But what you are doing is changing yourself. See, the hero at the end of the story always comes home to themselves. And what's interesting, when you go back home to where you began, if you've ever experienced this, of going back to your childhood home, what's so fascinating, if you've ever gone back to your childhood home, isn't it interesting how small it feels? The reason why it feels so small is because you realize when you go back that you've outgrown it. That when you left, you changed. You grew. You learned something about yourself. That life tested you. That you discovered something by facing this challenge, by answering the call, and you surprised yourself with your ability to face new things in a new place that you never thought you'd be capable of doing. So whenever you come back to where you came from, you will be confronted with the fact that it stayed the same, but you haven't. And maybe what you're recognizing as you listen to this is that there have been many, many heroes' journeys that you've already learned from in your life. When you left home for college, when you discovered your strength after a relationship ended, when you overcame a health challenge, or handled an unexpected setback or layoff. You pushed through grief and learned how to live with it. You moved to a new place and found a new community. Or maybe you look back and you see that you're a totally different person today because of the habits and the changes that you committed to and started over a year ago. And look, you and I might not be fighting the empire or truly saving the world, but every single day when you wake up, you're facing your own battles. You're in the trenches. You're doing the work. You're in the midpoint of some journey that you're on, and you are stronger and braver and more resilient than you know. That's what makes you the hero in your own life. So if you're sitting there feeling like, yeah, things are a little ordinary, I am a little bored, or maybe you're realizing that tension isn't tension at all. It's telling you something bigger, and you need to stop ignoring it. You need to see it for what it is. It's a call to adventure, and it's time for you to answer the call and begin the journey. And I can promise you this, you already got me as your ally. I may not be as good looking as Gandalf, but I'm going to be there right by your side on your hero's journey. You and I are going to go on an extraordinary journey together. You're going to learn that you have something in common with some of the most beloved characters in movies and stories and myths. And just like Luke Skywalker, Milan, Frodo, all of the Avengers, you are being called to a new adventure in your life, and you might not even realize it.